What's up, everybody? It's Greg Birch, Delta Financial, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring on guest speakers. Today, we got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Mr. Donnie Boivin. Donnie.
Hey, what's up, brother, man?
What's going on, brother? How are you?
Oh, good, man. Good. I was checking out your show just a little bit and kind of your background, some good shit you're into, bud. I'm looking forward to this.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. I'm actually excited because I was reading your bio. I was like, oh, this is going to be really good. This is a good one. So for the audience that doesn't know Donnie, Donnie is a highly successful entrepreneur, author, and podcaster. As the CEO of 3 thriving companies, Success Champion Networking, Badass Business Summit, and Champions Table Mastermind, he's a proven leader in the business community. With 5 best-selling books under his belt and a top-rated podcast, Growth Mode, Donnie is a recognized authority in the industry. He is committed to empowering other entrepreneurs to achieve their goals and realize their full potential. Donnie's passion is to help as many people as possible to achieve freedom through building a successful business. He believes that the path to financial and personal freedom lies in entrepreneurship and is dedicated to helping others achieve that freedom. Donnie's mission is to help entrepreneurs develop the skills, knowledge, and mindset they need to grow their businesses and achieve their dreams. He invites anyone looking to take their business to the next level to join the Champions 90 Challenge at champions90.com and start their journey to success today. Donnie, I like that, man.
Dude, I sound good. I mean, I'm just going to get that little snippet and just play that everywhere I go. And that's just going to be my commercial intro, man.
That's funny. Every time I read someone's bio, they're like, man, I sound awesome when you read that out. That's me.
Yeah. I got to tell the team, well done on writing that one.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a good one. So Donnie, you have 3 successful companies. How long have you been an entrepreneur for?
So I launched my companies in 2017 after a 20-year career of straight commission sales. Okay. So I was one of those guys that just thought I could do it better, and left corporate.
Turns out you're right.
Well, not for the first couple of years.
Yeah. There's always those bumps and bruises on the way.
Oh, dude, you got to go through the shit show of not knowing what you're doing and everything else as you're building a business. So, I think for me, the most fascinating thing out of all of it, though, is you finally get to meet the dude in the mirror.
Yeah.
When you can get to that place where you run out of your own damn excuses and, start actually doing the things that you need to get doing to build businesses. So it's been a wicked fucking journey.
Dude, that right there is so fucking true. Meeting yourself. Like you meet your true self.
Oh, dude, your business works more on you than you'll ever work on it. Yeah. It's really easy. When you're an employee, excuses come easy and they're legit. You can blame the marketplace. You can blame competition. You can blame bad leads, the weather, whatever, right? They're legitimate excuses. You shouldn't use them, but they're legit. But when you run your business, you ain't got time to wait for, competition, the marketplace, the weather, anything else. It's your sole livelihood and the livelihood of others because you likely have employees and shit if you get to that place. Yep. And, you got no time for excuses. You got to do the work until the work's done. And once you get there, man, it gets pretty eye-opening because once you realize that success is on you and failure's on you, then there's only one place. You either decide to take the hits and move forward or you hit rock bottom like I did. And so you got no choice but to fight. So,
so you were commission sales. What did you sell?
So I started off in HVAC door-to-door sales.
Oh, that's a grind, I bet.
Oh man. So I started off
the worst.
Dude, I started off as a grunt right out of the Marine Corps. Doing I was a guy climbing under houses and up in attics in Texas, 110-degree weather. It sucked. And I was getting ready to quit. And as I was getting ready to quit, because I just couldn't do that shit anymore, the owner of the company goes, oh, that's the I'm going to quit face. I'm like, yeah, I'm done. He goes, hey, before you quit, try something for me. And I'm like, all right, what am I trying? He goes, tomorrow, come with a polo and a pair of slacks. He goes, I'm going to drop you off in a neighborhood and you're just going to go knock on houses and try and get people to look at our stuff or let us look at their stuff. And I said, I'm in. He goes, hold on. I don't pay you anything unless you sell something. I said, I don't care. I don't want to climb in attics and underneath houses. He goes, yeah. I said, I'm in. I'll give it a go. I didn't know what sales was. So I had no idea what the hell I was really doing.
Yeah.
So he would take me and literally drop me in a neighborhood, and I would go knock on doors and try and get people to let us come look at their systems. I did that for 3 weeks without selling a thing. And he each day would drop me in a neighborhood with a cooler of water. And he said, dude, there's your water. I'd get no lunch or anything. He's like, just get back to there if you need more water. So one day he forgot to get the cooler of water. He's like, screw it, just get a water off one of the homeowners. So I'm around noon. It's 100 some odd degrees. It's blazing. I'm sweating my ass off. And I knock on the door and a lady answers and she goes, can I help you? Oh, and she started to close the door on me. And I said, hold on, man. I'm so sorry. And I explained to her I had no water. Can I just get a cup of water? And she goes, oh, bless your heart. Come on in. Right. So I come in, I sit down, I'm getting a glass of water. I'm just dying of thirst here. And she can tell. And she goes, all right, well, you're in my house. You might as well tell me why you're here. And I said, well, honestly, I don't know. She goes, what do you mean you don't know? And I explained to her, he just drops me in neighborhoods. I knock on houses trying to get somebody to let me look at their units. And she goes, so he just needs to come look at the unit? And I said, yeah. She goes, well, call him up. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, call him up. So I called Jerry up and I'm like, Jerry, you're not going to believe this shit. She goes, what? I said, she wants you to come look at her unit. He goes, really? I'm like, yeah. So he comes out and he does, and we end up doing like a little $125 job, nothing big. I made like $5 on it or something. But I promise you, for the rest of that summer, I had to piss a lot because every house I was like, hey, can I get a glass of water? I forgot my cup of water. And that's how I learned how to door-to-door sell.
Dude, that's perfect. I knew when you were like, oh, I got to get a glass of water. I knew that was going to be your first step.
It works. So if you're doing door-to-door sales, right?
Yeah.
Ask for water, coffee, something.
Yeah, no, it works really well because it just breaks down that barrier.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting fact. I'm going to point out a couple things here. First off, you door knocked for 3 weeks without a sale, bro. Do you know how many people nowadays will buy one batch of leads of interested potential clients and they won't even dial them and they'll quit? Or they'll dial them one time and then be like, well, this is difficult. Oh, poor me. Like,
well, I mean, I can't help that they've been coddled their entire damn life. I mean, not to say I'm better than anybody or anything like that, but dude, I grew up as a blue collar kid. You worked.
Yeah.
And my job was to go knock on doors. That was what I was told to do. So that's what I did. Now, did I start to worry that I wasn't making any money? Yeah, real quick. But my alternatives were worse than what I was doing. My alternatives, I could go climb back up in attics, which I didn't want to do. I could go flip burgers, which I didn't want to do. You know, I wasn't qualified because military didn't teach me shit. So I wasn't qualified to do anything.
Yep.
So I had to figure this out. And I think that's kind of the point of a lot of my life is getting myself to that place where you got no choice but to figure it out. And, you know, and I will even go even further and say, I didn't get successful in that sale for a while. Because I still didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I took them from 300,000 to a $3 million company in a year and a half. And we got to start doing commercial stuff. And it was just all because I just got used to getting punched in the face verbally and not caring.
Yeah.
And I think that's where most people have got to get.
They got to get through that.
Yep.
They got to get through the hard knocks, right?
Yep.
And it's really powerful that you had that experience, right? And you basically had your back against the wall. You're like, dude, there's no other option. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Like, and you weren't like actively looking like, let me go pull up and start preparing my resume or like, I'll have this to fall back on. Right. Which, by the way, thank you for your service. I appreciate it.
Same to you. Same to you. It's my honor.
I appreciate it. So it's, if you're watching this, I want you to stop and actually put yourself in that scenario. Like, for all of you that are 1099 sales entrepreneurs or sales independent, self-employed business people, I want you to think about, I have to go knock doors every damn day and not get a sale for 3 weeks. And I'm going to keep doing it. And then look at where you're at now and really weigh those out and be like, could I have it worse? You could. So stop complaining about where you're at. Right. And just get to work. And I like I love hearing stories like this, because it's like, dude, like, it's because you had to go through the grind. But here's the thing is that you said it yourself, like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had to like go through this stuff in order to learn it. anybody can go through that and learn it. Like we all have a
Yeah,
brain,
for sure.
right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody was always like there's a natural born salespeople, whatever.
Yeah, I don't believe
Here's the truth. It's not such thing. Now, some people may be gifted with talents of being maybe more outgoing, or maybe they're born with a little bit more confidence or something. But most things are freaking learned.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about anything is once you learn a skill, that skill stays with you for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
So I can trace back to learning, and I always tell everybody, somebody asked me one time, what did door knocking teach you? And I said, it taught me how to make myself a human really quick. Because it's easy to tell a sales guy to fuck off, right? It's easy to tell a sales guy they're nothing. They're not human to people.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to tell a human to fuck off.
Yeah.
So what I found is by asking for that glass of water, I instantly became a human versus somebody just trying to sell them something. So I've applied that to everywhere I've been on my journey is how do I become a human in this moment? How do I become a human in this conversation? And now flash forward 20 some odd years later, and my greatest move ever is I use my story of where I've been to become a human really quick in the conversations. So a prime example, when I launched this company, I was put under an international non-compete. My last company I worked for was an international sales training organization. Supposedly was one of the top sales trainers in the country. I don't know what that means other than I'm good at flapping my gums in front of a room, right? So I left that and got put under an international non-compete where I couldn't talk about sales, sales training, sales management, business development anywhere in the world. So my first year in business, I couldn't talk about the only thing I knew. So I started throwing a shit ton of money at coaches, courses, and everything, trying to figure out how to run a business. Well, 6 months of doing that, my wife asleep upstairs, I walk out the backside of my farm and her Jeep's missing. And I call the police and I said, "Hey, I think my wife's Jeep's been stolen." And they said, "No, sir, it's been repossessed." And then I had to go up and tell my wife the rest of the story, which was my mortgage was 3 months behind and we were about to lose everything because they had just gotten my first letter that said they may foreclose on the farm. And my wife went in, cashed in her 401k, and told me to get off my ass and go sell something. And I use that story to say I went from there to here. And when I have to tell that story as part of my sales conversation, man, people lean in hard because I got vulnerable first.
Yeah.
Right? I became human first. So I tell a lot of people, if you're out there selling, I don't care if it's insurance or whatever else, if you're nervous, you're scared, you're whatever your emotion you're feeling or experiencing, tell them. Literally say, "Dude, I don't like cold calls and I'm nervous as heck right now. Is it okay if I tell you why I'm calling or do you want to go ahead and hang up?"
Yeah.
They will laugh and they're like, "All right, give me your spiel." And you may not make it farther than that, but you get past that initial freaking knee-jerk reaction of, hell, here's another sales guy.
When I was like grinding on the phones when I was early in
Mhm.
insurance, I used to I used to tell people like, "I'm sorry." I used to start off the phone
Yeah.
call like, "I'm really nervous. My manager is staring at me
I love it.
and like he looks like he's gonna fire me if I don't set an appointment because I keep having people hang up on me." And they were be like, "Oh, that sucks." And I'm like, so if I'm stuttering or I'm nervous, that's why."
Yeah,
Worked every
yeah,
time,
yep,
bro.
yep. It's because you become human.
Every
Right? So people, they get these scripts or they get these, things that corporate gives them and said, "This is how you should freaking do it." And man, use it as a guideline, but you got to go in and make them understand that you're just like their son, daughter, cousin, nephew, neighbor, whatever else, because you're going to get a different version of them talking to you.
Yeah,
And the more you can stay human, because as soon as you become a sales guy, it's over.
yeah.
Right? As soon as you go for any sort of sales maneuver, conversation's out. I mean, it's just not going to work. Um, so, and hell, 90% of sales is being able to ask the right damn questions and
And
just getting
listen,
in.
and then listen.
Yep. So you can then turn around and ask the right question because
Yeah,
uh, everybody is trying to get to their key point, like their move, their maneuver, their whatever else. Man, there's only 5 or 6 things that happen on every sales call. Get those things right. right? And make those moves at the right time. You know, I heard Alex Hermosi on a podcast,
He's
which
great, by the way.
dude, I'm fascinated listening to his shit right now.
Dude, he is brilliant, bro. The way that he speaks about stuff,
breaks it down so easy.
he breaks it out so easy, but the way he talks about it is just like, dude, this guy is a genius.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you. On one of his, I don't know if his YouTube podcast, he's like 4,000. He goes, I did 4,000 sales calls. Dude, I've sold millions of dollars over the fucking years, right? And I guarantee you, I probably haven't even done 1,000 sales calls. But he said, I did 4,000. He goes, there's nothing anybody can say to me on a sales call that I haven't already heard hundreds of times. And I thought, God, if I had done 4,000 sales calls, I'd be right there with him that, you know, literally nobody could say anything to you that you wouldn't have maneuver. Now, in his defense, he sat in a gym and people walked into him. I don't want to take it away from me. He wasn't prospecting per se, but he was still getting the reps in.
Yeah.
And so I tell everybody, if your sales really sucks right now, then race to 1,000 fucking conversations.
Yeah.
Because if you get even 100 conversations where you specifically ask somebody to buy your services and not give a shit about the outcome and not give a shit how uncomfortable you feel or how, you know, weird you may look or sound, you literally just ask the next 100 people to do business with you, buy insurance from you. You're going to figure out your sales process and how to do this. Just people won't take the fucking hits.
Yeah. And it does take hits. So I love that you talk about making yourself human. And there's a couple of things that I do. So I'm a big dude. I'm 6'7". Like,
shit.
Obviously you can't tell by looking at me, but I'm 6'7". I'm about 230 right now, and I'm usually about 250. But I've been fasting and dropping weight and cutting. So every single time that somebody asks me my name, which almost always happens on sales, like, oh, well, what's your name again? I'll be like, oh, it's Greg Birch, and my last name's Birch. I say Birch, Birch, like the tree. Which, if you saw me right now, you'd laugh because I'm 6'7". I'm a massive dude. I'm like a walking tree, and they're like, oh, the birch tree, and they start laughing every single time. But it just breaks. It's like small things like that break the ice. And then I would also, like, when I tell them, like, hey, if I was going to go to their house, I would say, hey, just so you know, I'm going to pull up in this kind of car. Do not be alarmed because I'm 6'7", about 250. Like, I look like I play for the Dallas Cowboys. Don't ask for an autograph. It will not do you any good, but I will sign it for you.
Now, I want to dive into that, because so I'm going to reverse interview a second.
Yeah.
Your first sales call, did you use that tactic?
No.
Right. So that's my key point, because somewhere along the way, you had enough conversations where that came out in a conversation, they laughed, and in the back of your head, you filed away, go, oh, that's a moment.
Yep.
And now you start using it. This is how you learn to sell, guys. So if you're listening to this, it's 100% how you learn to sell. Is, I remember, I'm a one call close, right? I don't chase. I don't do anything else. I just think, let's get in. Let's have a real conversation. Put all the cards on the table. And if you're going to hem and holler or anything else, I'm going to look at you and say, you know what? I appreciate it. Let's call it a no. If something ever changes, you come back to me. If there's any chance it's going to be a yes, they're going to correct you. Say, no. Let's keep talking and figure this out. If it's going to be a no anyways, I'm not going to overcome objection and fight it. I'm just going to move the fuck on. There's way too many people out there.
Yeah.
But
abundance mindset, guys. Abundance mindset.
Oh, totally. So this guy, one time, this just wholly happened in the middle of a sales call, like it always does. And he goes, look, man, I never make a decision on the first call. And I said, cool, no worries, because I never come back. And he looked at me and goes, all right, let's do it. And I said, what changed for you? And back in my head, I'm like, what did I just say? Why did that work? And he goes, well, you said you'd never come back. So I was pretty close to making a decision on this. I just had a rule that I wouldn't make it on the first call. So now I started using it, moving on. I just tell people, go, hey, look, I'm going to ask you at the end of this if you would like to do this or not. And I really mean, if we're going to do something, let's do it. If not, just know that I'm not going to come back. I'm not going to follow up and chase you down and everything. And I started using that proactively, and people really leaned into the conversation. I was like, shit, that was the right thing. But I'd have never got there if he would have said I never, make a decision on the first call. Everything about your sales process comes in a moment of having all these conversations.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the reasons that works so well is that it's like extreme transparency, which That's what people don't like. They don't like to be sold because there's no transparency there. It's like, I'm not trying to sell you. These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Right.
Like, and it's like at the same time you're trying to use all these word tracks to like get them to buy. It's like, hey, you like drinking water? Yeah. You like drinking clean water? Do you like to make sure that your water tastes crisp and cold? And you're like trying to sell this like water purification system.
Right.
Bullshit, right?
Right.
And it's like, dude, but I'm not trying to sell you. I just gotta ask. Don't do that. Don't ask those questions. Like they know subconsciously. Whereas if you come out like, hey man, I'm not gonna chase you. Like I'm just gonna give you the offer. If it works for you, awesome. Let's do business. If not, no worries. I'm out.
Yeah, for sure. It's it. I mean, and to your point of people don't want to be sold is the way I wrap my head around the kind of the whole sales conversation and what you're actually doing is I'm not a guy that believes in closing. I will say closing so people understand where I'm talking about the sales process, but I don't believe in trying to close somebody out. All I want to do is help them make a decision. So if they're sitting across from you, there's a need or an interest in what you have. Otherwise, they wouldn't be fucking sitting across from you.
Yeah.
So your job is to help them understand what they're actually trying to make a decision about, and then help them to literally freaking make the right decision. And it may be use your services. It may be to tell you no.
Yep.
And you just got to have the courage to be able to own that conversation enough that if it's not a good fit, you tell them. And you be completely honest with them. And what fucks everybody is when that moment they go, but I need this deal, I need this commission. And then they start forcing the sale.
Yep.
And then they get that transaction done. And then that customer becomes their most miserable fucking customer on the planet because they convinced them versus helping them make the right decision. And then things go haywire on the back end of things. And now all the complaints and then every non-payments and everything come through, right? You just got to help them decide. They want to make a decision. They're just not used to it most times.
And I think a key point here also is if a lot of salespeople, a lot of novice salespeople will hear that and you'll think that you have to tell them all of this stuff. And that's not the case. You have to ask them the right questions to where they have a self-realization and they say,
yes, 100%.
You want them to say this stuff by asking open-ended questions that are not like aggressive, but they're assumptive, right?
Yep.
And you want that conversation to come from them. So like when I first started in sales, I would always be like, hey, most people that were looking for this kind of insurance is for one of three reasons. And I give them 3 reasons and it's one, 2, and 3. Which one fits you?
And then you always get the one that go, none of those.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. It's like, well, none of those fit. So then I just changed and said, hey, what motivated you to fill out that form?
Yes, beautiful question.
Done. And then it says, and then you know what? I would get like, I'm just looking for good some coverage. And I've got people that just tell me the whole life story.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there listening and nodding and been writing notes. And okay, they could give me everything right then and there. Right.
You know, but I love that. It's an evolution. So for me, my first question when I sit across from anybody is like, hey, you know what? I've seen a lot about you, read a little bit about you. Maybe I looked up your LinkedIn profile, but that's all the online stuff. Why don't you tell me your story? How did we get here?
Oh, that's good.
Right. And they'll lean in. And if they're really introverted, get ready because they're going to tell you their entire fucking life story, you know, but you're going to, I'm just to correlate to insurance, man, as they tell you their story and their journey of how they got to here, you're going to find a lot of key information you're going to need.
Yes.
Right.
It's basically like ammunition that you're putting in your weapon.
Yes.
That you're like, that's good. That's good. Because this is all information that they're going to, that you basically like, you're telling me how to sell you. You're telling me what I need to say at the end in order to make this deal happen.
Absolutely. So another way to wrap your head around this is you should spend the entire sales call actually trying to disqualify them versus qualify them.
Yep.
Right. So if you think about, you know exactly what you need for them to be a good fit and client for you. Like you need to know if it's insurance or cars, what kind of stuff they have already, liabilities, and all that crap. But whatever you're selling, they got to have money. They got to be able to make a decision. They got to have the energy to do it. They got to be willing to put into work, right? There's got to be key factors you have. So you take those things and every question you're asking is checking one of those boxes off. So as they tell you your story, you're listening for the key things that go, yep, they got that. Yep, they got that. Nope, they ain't got that. So we got to go figure that out. Right. And that will allow you to stay on the open end side of things, because you got to get really curious to get all those questions answered.
Yep.
So by the time you get to the end of the call, you can decide, is it worth making an offer, or do I need to tell them, hey, what I got's not a fit for you?
Yep.
It's a repetition, man.
And here's the magical thing about it, is that the more questions you ask and the more quiet you are and let them talk, they gain an affinity the more they talk to you, because they're like, man, this person understands me, and I can just talk to them, and they're just listening, right? Because it's unlike most salespeople, so they're just gonna sit there and talk, and you're just going, and just like, and I'll throw in some empathy. I'm like, oh, so you mean like this? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, so it sounds like you're looking at this, okay, and I'll just repeat things they say to me, right? And it's building rapport, even though I'm doing nothing but asking an open-ended question. And the more they talk, the more they'll give. The more they give, the more they feel understood. And that is a basic human need, to feel understood.
Well, and some of the greatest questions in that moment are simple questions like, oh, tell me more.
Yeah.
Ooh, what do you mean by that? Right. Right. And lean in or go, wow. Right. Just simple things like that, that they truly feel heard. But you can't fake this shit, right? You got to be into it.
You have to be interested. Yes.
Right. So it's not about putting on an act, is you generally want to give a shit about the conversation.
Mm.
And the more you can do that, the more you can do this stuff. And in this day and age, most people have been hiding in the shadows, right? We don't even have to use tellers at the checkout anymore, so we're not used to talking to people. So when you've got somebody sitting across from you and you show that you're truly interested in that person, man, they will lean into that cool conversation hard.
Oh yeah,
and it gets a lot of fun too.
Yeah. So I got a funny story. I haven't shared this. I think I've shared this one time in a different podcast, somebody else's podcast, but it's about being human. I think kick out of it. But so I was in the field. This was when I was in the field in insurance, and I was going into homes, and I was like sitting with clients. I'd spend one day just making appointments for 2 days worth of appointments, and I'd have 7 to 8 appointments each day. So I'm in like downtown Dallas, in a small little suburb that's in that area. And I show up to this house, and I walk up and I knock, and no one answers. And so I get back to my car, and I realize, like, because I was always house to house to house, I had to key every single time I had to get to someone's home. So I just like get in. I'm like, hey, can I use your bathroom? So I get to my car, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta piss. So I'm looking up the closest gas station, and it's like 3 miles away, but with traffic and everything, it's like 10 minutes. I'm like, I'm not making it. So then I look at my book, and I'm like, I find, because I have this calendar book with like all the information for all my clients for every day. And so I look at her, and I pull her up, and I look at her phone number. I call, no answer, call, no answer. I'm like triple dialing her, like nothing. And so it hits me. I'm like, dude, it's like 10 o'clock. I haven't seen a car or a soul anytime. It's like on a Wednesday, there's like nobody everyone's at work. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna piss outside. So like I'm looking around, I'm trying to find an area to piss. Well, I decided to go piss beside the house because it's like kind of in a little alleyway. So I go piss, go up, and I'm sitting there, and I'm pissing the house. And I'm hyper aware because I'm like listening to see if like anyone's walking a dog or like anything like that. And all of a sudden I feel someone's eyes on me. And I look over, they had opened the window of that house that I was and there's a guy looking out, and he was like, dude, are you pissing on my house? And I said, no, I'm pissing beside your house. Is Jacqueline home?
Dick in hand and everything. Holy hell.
He was like, yeah. And I was like, dude, I just knocked. I'm here for my appointment. If you'd answered, I'd have used bathroom. And I was like, can you go grab her? And he was like, yeah. I was like, I'll meet you at the front door. Dude, I walked in, went into the appointment, and we laughed about it for like 10 minutes. And I just sat there and made fun of myself. And I told her stories.
Oh, dude, that's it. Out of all of it, that's the most brilliant move.
Dude.
For self-deprecation in the middle of a sales call is brilliant.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The more you can laugh at yourself over silly shit like that is brilliant. Well done.
And they sold, and they bought. And I had no.
Well, I mean, at that point, how would you not? I mean, this is the story they're still telling, right? They're around the card table, however many years ago. Now they're still sitting at a card table, going, "Let me tell you about this dude who sold me my insurance. This motherfucker was pissing on my house."
Yeah, exactly.
That's
So
awesome.
it's like moments like that. I've told agents that story like on one-on-one, because I'm like, I've got some crazy stories from the field. And they're like, oh my God, you still sold it? And I'm like, yeah, well, what I learned from it is like, just be you, just be a human being. And I'm like, make fun of yourself. Like, if you can inject humor into a sale, especially self-deprecating
Yeah.
humor, like you were just saying, if you can put self-deprecating humor into a sale and you can make fun of yourself, it literally is the opposite chemical than what they're going to feel initially when they think it's a sales call, which they're going to be apprehensive. They're going to be, it's their fight or flight. They're kind of in the process of like putting their arms out and pushing you away, locking their knees and
Yep.
digging their heels in. And that's what they're doing when they're really apprehensive. And when you get them to laugh, bro, it's the complete opposite. It's just like, it makes them lean in.
And if you're hearing this, don't like practice a whole bunch of cheesy jokes and shit. I mean, this
No,
is all got to be a fucking in the moment, real thing,
yeah,
natural part of the company. For me, everybody always told me, dude, you got to ask questions. You got to ask questions. You got to be funny. You got to do all these things. And, I'm not a small talk guy. I really suck at it. So it's just not something I'm natural at. So what I had to do is I had to write down a list of 10 or 20 questions. And I
Mhm.
kept this list. And before I would walk into those houses doing HVAC in particular, I would run through my list of questions, everything that I should be asking these people. And then I would play a game with myself of how many questions can I remember to actually ask. And what happened was I did that enough freaking times that I didn't need to have the list of questions anymore because the conversation became curious and more questions were done. But going back to it became so many reps that I learned my own flow and I learned my own moves, my own conversational style. And then the comedy type stuff or the humor came along for the ride because you're going to hear a homeowner say something, you're going to make something off the cuff joke at one point and you're like, they're going to laugh. You're like, okay, file that one away. So next time you hear that homeowner say something like that, you got that in your arsenal to pull up and use.
yep,
So if you're listening to all this and you're like, dude, open-ended questions, be funny and everything else, just start with a list of questions, a whole big list that you're going to try and get through. Don't try and get through them like a robot stoic,
no,
but try and get through them, methodically so you can learn your own rhythm and pace in this.
yeah. And also realize that when you're asking those questions, there's gonna be times where you ask one question, that person's just gonna talk and talk and talk, and they'll answer like 4 of your questions. If you go back and you answer or you ask one of the questions, you're like, well, I asked question number 1. Now I got to ask question
Yeah.
number 2. You're gonna seem like somebody that's not even paying attention to the conversation. Like
Yep.
this seems like it's common sense, but it's not common sense. I've had so many
Dude.
salespeople
All right.
do
So
that.
funny story. It's not a sales one, but this is how I got into podcasting. So I'd given a speech in Fort Worth, Texas. And after my speech, a guy walks up to me and he goes, hey, I love your story. I love your energy. Would you come tell it on my podcast? I'm like, what the hell's a podcast? This was 2018. And he explains it's like a news talk radio show. So I go on his podcast. It's a freaking blast. After the show aired, a guy reached out to me and became a client. I'm like, oh, wow, I can go guest on podcasts and use it as a sales tool. I'm in. So I started getting on a lot of podcasts. It was
Yeah.
around the 50th interview I did or so. This guy gets me on a show and he sends me a list of 20 questions. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Nobody's ever sent me questions before. Get there on the Zoom with him and he goes, okay, question 1. And he reads the question and I answer and try and create a little dialogue. And he goes, question 2. And I answer the question. I get a little answer. And he goes, question 3. And now me being me, I'm trying to help the guy out. And I'm like, dude, how'd you get into podcasting? He goes, question 4. And I'm like, oh shit. And the whole podcast went this way. And I won't say the name of the show because it's out there still.
Yeah.
And after that interview, I'm like, dude, if this is how this guy interviews, I'm launching my own fucking show. And that's literally how I started my show because he just was going to go through all fucking 20 questions. Question 5. So yes, don't backtrack to try and get your questions in. Learn to listen to what they're saying
Yeah.
and use the questions as a tool to get to the next stage of the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
So you had that challenging time to get
Yep.
back to your story, right?
Right.
You had that challenging time that you were like, your wife had to do cash out of 401k and she was like, hey, get to fucking work.
Yep.
Start selling. Where does that transition point where you're like, okay, now I start selling to where I can talk about sales to where
Yep.
I'm scaling my companies, and how did that grow
Well,
through
let
that?
me talk about that particular moment. So, for the dudes listening, man, let me tell you, when you got to look at your wife and saying, we're about to lose everything, a lot of shit goes through your head. I mean, the biggest thing that hit me was I definitely wasn't holding up my end of the bargain to the marriage. And I wasn't fulfilling my role of being a fucking man. And in this time, it's more important we talk about being a fucking man because of all the stupid shit that gets thrown around nowadays. But
Yeah.
I digress. So that night I went up and I was looking in my bathroom mirror and I was just mentally beating the shit out of myself. And I did something weird and I looked at it and tried to tell myself and I tried to say, dude, I love you. Looking at myself just felt too fucking weird. I couldn't do it. So I flipped it and I said, I'm proud of you. And then all of a sudden in the back of my head, it popped up. No, you're not. You're not doing the work, man. You're not doing the sales calls. You're not putting in the time. And all these things started popping up. And I realized in that moment when I said, I'm proud of you, my subconscious was literally saying all the things I needed to go work on. So that next morning, dude, I got up and I started selling. I didn't know all the things I was selling. Business was all over the fucking place, but I started calling anybody I could call, anybody who'd listen, networked, everything. And I started selling a little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. And every night I'd go back to the mirror and I'd sit, look myself dead in the eyes and go, dude, I'm proud of you. And if anything popped up, that was the next thing I had to go work on. And so I got the company starting to move. And luckily in 2018, my podcast took off and became one of the top podcasts in the world at that point and was doing some really, really cool things. And I went back to the mirror and said, I'm proud of you. And instantly it popped up and said, no, you're not. When's the last time you took your wife out to dinner? When's the last time you fucking did something nice for her? And I realized I'd poured all my time and energy into the company and wasn't doing anything with her. So I had to go back and start taking care of Elizabeth. And right. So now I still use it as a tool, is going straight at the mirror and going and just say, I'm proud of you. And whatever pops up is a thing you got to fix and go do.
Mhm.
So that was a key part of it. What really got me to turn the corner was taking a chance on an opportunity when the opportunity arose. So in April of 20, I'd rented out the Hearst Convention Center here in Fort Worth, Texas, and I was doing the inaugural Badass Business Summit. Well, obviously, pandemic hits and we can't do the damn summit. So, me and my co-founder, COO Kevin, we have a huge background in business networking. He ran 52 BNI chapters up in Minnesota with 4,000 people in them. I ran 11 networking groups for the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce and had 6 of my own going. We both had been burned out on networking before we launched our companies, and networking was never going to be something that we were going to do. And when that pandemic hit, we saw that the whole world was fixing to go online. And it took me 2.5 years to build a legitimate online business, man. It was one of the toughest things I've ever done in my life. And I knew people had no way in hell did they have that kind of timeline to be able to transition to online and still stay in business. So that night, Kevin and I figured it out that we were going to launch online networking groups because we both kind of had a skill set that the world could really use. But we knew we couldn't do the shit show of what networking had always been. So that's why we launched the networking groups, and it worked, and it's fastest growing networking organization on the planet right now. But the point of that is when adversity hit and the whole world went one direction, we leaped in and took chance on an opportunity and said, okay, we can do something with this moment.
Mhm.
And if people really look at the times we're fixing to come into with the way the recession's going to hit and the likes, this is the opportunity. This is that moment you got to start building. This is that moment you got to start creating. This is that moment you got to fucking ratchet down and get after it, because when the whole world runs one direction, the guys that freaking create, build, and grow. Because if you look at some of the biggest companies in the world, they were all built on the back of the hardest times ever.
Yeah.
And so what I would biggest learning for me was you got to meet the dude in the mirror, and then you got to seize the opportunities when the opportunities arrive.
Yeah, that's a method for self-awareness, which I think is
Yeah,
important.
yeah, huge.
Which the entire podcast started. We started with that, which
Yep.
was you're going to find yourself when it comes to running a business. And I can tell you, I like how you talked about being a 1099 salesperson, then being an entrepreneur, and how the differences between those. Really,
Yes,
you
yes,
really differentiated those, and they are different.
massively.
I was when I was a 1099 agent, I thought like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I work for myself.
So did I. So did I.
So, dude, I'm telling you, it's night and day different than when you have
Oh,
a company that you're
two different
responsible
worlds.
for. It's two different stuff.
Yep.
So, so that's one key, and you will have to have moments of self reflection. You have to, right? because your business is relying upon you.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, and I want to dive into that because I struggled for a lot of years. People were like, dude, you got to know yourself. You got to know what you're made of. And it frustrated me to hear that because I didn't know how to fucking know myself. I didn't know how to figure out who I was. And it just forever couldn't wrap my head around it. So for your listeners, here's how you rarely get to know yourself. To know yourself means you need to understand why you're reacting or that emotion is popping up whenever something happens.
Yeah.
So think about the thing that creeps you out the most. Maybe it's picking up the phone and going cold calling. Well, when that feeling pops up about doing a cold calling, you need to ask yourself, why do I feel this anxious, nervous, whatever in making this cold call? And then you need to go explore that. And then you need to find out, well, is that a real thing? Is that a real emotion? And what you're going to find is the more you explore those emotions and those things that pop up, the more you're going to meet yourself and discover yourself. And when you realize that nothing really truly matters, nobody gives a shit about you, and I don't mean that in a negative way. They're just not thinking about you, right? They don't care if you win or lose. So once you understand that this is all a game and you just got to get good at playing the fucking pieces, you'll figure yourself out and have some really good time doing it.
Absolutely. No. And they don't fucking care.
No.
That's why, like, so when I became remote sales, when I first, because when COVID happened for me in insurance, we were all in the home. And there was a lot of insurance agents that were still like, we're going in the home still because we're essential services. And so I'm also in the Dallas Fort Worth area. I was driving all over DFW, right? And literally doing the Star of David, like every single appointment I could, like all over the place. So I was like, you know what? If I show up to these houses and they're like, oh, I can't meet outside or can't meet because it's COVID, I'm going to lose my shit. So I'm just going to be like, I just took the next step. I said, hey, because of COVID, I don't want to put you in any like undue stress or anything like that. So let's just meet on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever. Everyone was like, yeah. So I started doing remote sales. Now, initially it was gangbusters because everyone was terrified of dying and everyone was okay with meeting on sales. But that period of time didn't last. It was about 3 months. And then it just kind of went down.
Especially here in Texas, we're like, all right, we're done with this.
We're done with this bullshit. So, but I was committed. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And so I had the way I did my presentation, I had this entire thing. It was the first like 10 minutes of my presentation was like, boom, boom, boom. Here's my license. Here's this, here's that. This is what we're going to do. This is all the products and services I have. Blah, blah, blah. This is me. Here's a picture of me. So I humanize myself, all this stuff. And so I thought that it was like basically catching everything I could. Right. And I would share my screen. I had this whole PDF. I go slide by slide. And I used to always do FaceTime appointments because it was just easy, but I couldn't share my screen and I hated FaceTime appointments. And I had this appointment at late at night and it was like a 7 or 8 p.m. And I remember setting the appointment and the person was like, they were kind of iffy. They seemed very like closed off when I set the appointment. So I was like, dude, this guy's probably not going to show up. Probably if he does show up, he's not going to buy. It's FaceTime. So I can't like share my screen and show my PDF. And I was like, I don't even want to show. Like, I'm tired. I've already had a bunch of sales for the day. I'm good. And something told me, I was like, no, you need to go. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get on there and I'm going to go straight for the throat, bro. I'm not going to tell him anything. I'm just gonna be like, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. Boom. I'm going to ask some questions. I'm jumping right in. Right. In order to get him off the phone as quick as possible, to disqualify him as quick as possible. So I can go, like, I got to eat dinner. Right. So I got on the FaceTime and I was like, yo, Brian, hey man, hey, real quick, I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to see what you're looking for. I'm going to see what makes sense for you. If I can find something awesome, I'll show you some options. And if you like it, I'll be your advisor and we'll see if we can get you approved. If not, no worries. We'll let you go and we'll part ways. Does that sound fair? He was like, yeah. All right, perfect. And I started asking questions. Dude, made the sale. I was done in 20 minutes.
Yep.
And I made the sale. And I was like, holy shit, that worked. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try that again. And so I tried it again and it worked. I tried it again and it worked. I tried. And so I was like, dude, and it hit me. I was like, I'm talking too much in the front end. They don't give a shit about me.
Nope. Here's the thing. Never take anything with you on a sales call. Nothing. Not a pen, not a pencil, not your phone, because anything you take, you're going to use.
Yep.
And as soon as you have to use something, it's a crutch and you lose the genuineness of the conversation.
Yep.
right? So this is why I tell people, and I love that you figured it out, because most people are like, "What I got to do to get to this point, and then I got to get to this point, and then I got to get to this point." They're running their process, which means they're not selling to the individual; they're selling at the individual.
Yes.
Right. So now you got to get to that point to where you're like, all right, let's go make this a dialogue. Let's tell them what's going to happen. Let's show them that that's going to happen. Let's get to the end and let's make a real ask.
Yeah.
And it's such a natural progression. And truthfully, most sales calls should be about 20 minutes. And
Yeah.
the caveat, if you have the big technical sales and there's a lot of moving parts and things like that, but things like insurance and stuff, it should be quick in, quick out.
Yeah. And if you do it the right way, you could be done with an application, like literally have everything done 25 minutes max.
And here's the other cool thing that's just popped in my head. So this is real time thinking. Most people want to be told what to do anyways. Now, don't take my words, guys, and be like, okay, now I got to tell them all the things to do. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you've got to get through the process to say, hey, this is how I'm going to start. This is a question that I'm going to ask. This is what we're going to do. And this is a side, right? You're telling them how the process is going to go.
Yeah.
They instantly are now going to have to come lean in on your process and your way of doing things. But you can't do this from a, hey, fucker, you're only going to do it my way type of thing, right? It's got to be genuine and real part of the conversation.
And you can also, when you're telling them which way to go, you could also do a recommendation. Like, for instance, like when I show them products, I only show two. I only show two options. I don't like showing three. I don't like showing four, because too many options makes them confused, right?
Right.
And there's a really old like shoe salesman that was famous for like his ability to sell shoes. And they're like, "Hey, how'd you do it?" And he was like, I only let them have two pairs of shoes at a time. If they ask for a third pair, I say, okay, which one do you not want of these two?
Oh, that's so smart.
And then he would take one away and he'd give him a second one, because it's way easier for the human mind to compare two things and pick which one is better than it is to compare three, then four, then five. So I would always give them two options. And then I would say, hey, based on your scenario, you have option A or option B. 90% of my clients, and what I always recommend, is option A, and here's why.
So smart.
And then but it's really up to you. And then know what they do. They're almost always naturally going to be like, well, I want to do what everyone else is doing. I want to do like that one. Okay,
so from a consumer standpoint, because I'm just playing that scenario, if you would have said that to me, what ran through my head instantly was insurance is confusing to people who don't understand insurance.
Yeah.
Like I bought new health insurance, end of last year, and holy hell, there's just too many things to think about and too many moving parts with it. So when people are looking at something and there's a lot of things to it, deductibles and all the other things that move stuff with it, the more that you can help them make that decision, like that recommendation, they're going to go, because now you've become the expert in it.
Yep.
Right. And now they have something that allows them to transition and justify the decision, because you recommended it. And obviously you're an expert in it because you're the guy selling it to me.
Yep.
So very smart.
And it's always the assumption, like, because I got, you'll have agents, because a senior or a veteran agent is typically someone that's been in insurance for a year. Like, dude, you made it past the year, you're solid, right? and so, but then at the same time, they're like, well, I don't know that. It's only been a year, or even like someone that's 6 months, like you've been doing it long enough, right? And it's like, dude, you have the license, right? You're the one doing the sale. Just act as if you're the professional, because you are.
Yes.
But you kind of, it's like disposition before position, right? You have to act it, and then it'll be that way. So.
Yeah. So I'm not a big fake it till you make it guy. I just don't believe in that, but I do believe in the authority side of things.
Yeah.
And so what to clarify your side of it, it's being able to go in and have those conversations, knowing you know enough to give them the right information.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to have it because you don't learn anything until you've sold it. Right. So cool story. Young guy that I was teaching sales training to, fresh out of college football. And I helped him get a job with one of my clients. He was supposed to go through 2 weeks of freaking learning on these equipments. They made huge labels, like for a Heinz ketchup bottle, but they printed millions upon millions of labels at a time. His job was to go out and find these companies to sell these labels to. They said for 2 weeks, all you're going to do is learn all the equipment, how everything works, the inks and all that stuff. 3 days into him working there, my buddy who I helping get the job there, who's the vice president of sales, called me up and said, I can't find Austin. I'm like, what do you mean you can't find Austin? He goes, his truck's here, but I don't know where the fuck he is. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I vouched for this kid. Now he's freaking flaking out on me. So my office is about 15 minutes away. I drive over there and I start asking around and nobody's seen him. I'm like, what the fuck is this kid doing? Right? I just got him a job. I completely vouched for him and nobody can find him. Finally get back and there was a Hispanic lady that was sweeping the floors and she couldn't speak very good English. And so I was trying to describe, a football player, and she goes, boxes. I'm like, what the fuck is she talking about? And I go back and here he is sitting in the back corner of the warehouse on boxes and he's hunched over his phone. And I walk up and I'm like, Austin, what the fuck are you doing? He goes, okay, I'll see what I can do. And he hangs up the phone. I said, dude, what the fuck are you doing? He goes, I'm making cold calls. I'm like, what do you mean you're making cold calls? He goes, dude, I can't learn anything until I sell it. You guys are trying to get me to learn equipment and shit. He goes, I'm a meathead fucking football player. I got to go out and sell this stuff so I can have a reason to learn this. I'm not going to be able to do it the other way around.
Yeah.
Walk back to the vice president of sales. I'm like, let him go. I said, he's going to figure this out by selling it. So I'll tell all your listeners, the only way you're going to wrap your head around how to sell this stuff, how to figure all this stuff out, how to have these conversations is to go sell it. Yes. Right? You got to go get in the moment, the heat of the moment, the heat of battle, however you want to look at it, and get into the dialogue, get into the conversations. And if you're playing that game of, I can't do that, that's not me, I'm going to go just network my way to do this or whatever bullshit you're going to throw out there, turn in your license, right? Just close up shop, because it's the guys who can go get punched in the face by doing the work, and learning from it, applying, adjusting. I mean, we would have never gotten to this level of sales without fucking up a lot of sales calls. And that's just the answer.
Absolutely. And think about it like this, like sales is like learning to ride a bike. I can explain to you all day long how to ride a bike. I can explain, you can read books on it. I can show you videos. But until you get your ass on that seat, if you've never rode a bike before, I promise you, you're going to have trouble keeping your balance, and you're probably going to fall a few times because your body's not used to keeping that balance. Period. End stop.
Yep.
That's just the way it is. You have to learn by doing.
Yeah. I was coaching a gal. She's got a pretty good sized bookkeeping firm, and her son works for her. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, I want to transition my son into being CEO. I'm like, cool. How did he earn that right? She goes, he's my son. I'm like, that didn't answer my question. How did he earn that right to be CEO? She's like, he's my son. I said, okay, what credentials does he have? Has he sold? Has he done marketing? What's he done? She goes, well, he's done some bookkeeping for me. I said, so why would you make him the CEO of your company? He doesn't know anything. And she goes, well, he's my son. He deserves a role. I said, here's what you need to do. Your next move is to make this kid a freaking sales guy. She goes, I want to make him CEO. Why do I make him sales guy? I'm like, because he needs to go get his freaking teeth kicked in trying to do sales and stuff so we can learn how to start the process of being a CEO in his company. Yep. And she's like, well, but that means people are going to tell him no, he's going to face rejection, he's going to do all this stuff. And I'm like, right. I said, we're just going to force him to grow up. I'm like, how old is this guy? She goes, 20. I'm like, dude, quit mama birding this dude and kick him out of the freaking nest and let's go let him get his teeth kicked in. The dude called me later that night and he goes, thank you. I've been trying to tell her that for a while. He goes, I'm scared shitless to go do this sales thing. He goes, but thank you for stepping in and saying that. She kept telling me that she wanted me to be CEO. I don't even know what the hell a CEO means. He goes, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm like, cool, let's go sell some shit and we'll figure it out. And it's just the same thing.
That's awesome.
Go sell.
Awesome. Well, so dude, Donnie, I feel like we can sit here and talk about this shit like all fucking day, bro.
For sure.
I didn't even know that you're in Fort Worth area. I think that's awesome, man.
So my farm's out in Azle by Weatherford.
I know. Yeah. So I'm in Forney.
Okay.
When I was moving to Forney, it was between Weatherford or Forney.
Oh, nice.
So it was like either the two different options.
You chose wrong.
Yeah. You chose poorly. So yeah, man. I appreciate you coming on board and sharing your wisdom and your expertise with the audience. If
For sure.
anyone wants to find you or reach out to you, listen to your podcast, what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, let's do this for you really, really quick. So, guys, if you made it this far for us, one, thanks for hanging out with this. But do Greg a huge favor. If you got any value out of this one tip, trick, anything, share this show out with another buddy that needs to hear this stuff. Having my own show, the Growth Mode Podcast, I can tell you the hardest thing in the world is building your audience. So, if you can share this out, whether it's this episode or any of his other episodes out with just one person, dude, it'll mean everything for him. If you guys would like to figure out how to get a lot of referrals into your business, if you'll text the word success to 817-318-6030, I'll send you a free class where I break down 10 different strategies on how to get a shit ton of referrals coming into your business. People have said it's been some of the most game-changing stuff for them. So you just text the word success to 817-318-6030, and all my social handles and stuff will get sent to that as part of that as well. You just got to give us your email address so we know where to send it. But it's Donnie Boivin on all social media. And dude, if you find me on social media, just tell me you heard it from this show, and I'll know where you're coming from, and I'll accept that invite a lot faster.
Nice. You already had share the show, bro. I like it. That's
for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
This is a funny one, and I'm stealing this from another podcaster, and we started doing this in our show. Even better thing you can do for Greg: take a screenshot of wherever you're listening to this, tag Greg and me in that screenshot on social media.
I will retag you.
We will both jump on there and comment, and engage with that, because that it's the coolest way to watch, actually promote one of the shows out. So
that's actually a great idea. I like that.
Yeah, it was pretty smart.
So Donnie, last question I ask all my guests. You have the opportunity to sit with 3 people, anyone in history that you want to break bread with, like have a conversation, learn from, living or deceased. Who would those 3 people be and why?
Richard Branson, one, because I think he's the most genuine motherfucker on the planet. He's probably the CEO I respect out of all the billionaires doing all the things, because he's the only guy I think what you see is what you get. I think a lot of the other guys put on a show.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, mainly, I just want to see what it's like to sit across from a dude that can outwork me, because he can flat out fucking work me, and I know he can. And then probably the third would be a trade up between Tom Bilyeu, Alex Hormozi, or Gary Vee. And the only reason I throw those 3 guys out there is I think they're some of the best in the game on personal branding and building a story out there in that story arc, and building a community and building a following. I got to throw in Dwayne Rock Johnson in that mix too, because I would put him in that same category.
Yeah.
And I just want to learn more about how they're showing up and doing the community. I don't give a shit about their businesses. I want to talk to them more about that personal brand and how they're constantly looking and building that and building and following their communities.
Yeah. No, I like, in terms of the building your brand. I mean, The Rock is probably out of the 4.
Genius.
He's a genius. Gary Vee is a close second. I'd say Gary Vee outpaces Tom Bilyeu.
He does. Tom's just done better at monetizing a community.
Yeah.
And that's what really fascinates me. And Alex is going to, I think, trump them all.
I think he is too. He's gaining some crazy momentum in everything that he's doing. I think that he will hit billionaire status very quickly.
And he's so smart. He took what Gary Vee said to do, which is what I've been doing, which is document the story. But this motherfucker's like, look, I'm going to make $1 billion. I'm going to document along the way. And he freaking is. And it's brilliant to watch. And it's a masterclass in business.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm fascinated with it. So.
Absolutely. Well, Donnie, this has been awesome. I appreciate you jumping on
and
just having a conversation and chopping it up with me. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, we'll see you. You guys take care.